Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's video, we are diving into one of the most powerful feature in SQL, such as subqueries. So we'll understand different types of subqueries using two simple tables. One is customers. So here we have customers and orders in my database. Okay, so we'll be using these two tables for the explanation of types of queries. So before getting into types, I'll clarify what is a query actually. So subquery is a SQL query inside another query. So we'll call it as a subquery. So different ways of using subqueries, like you can use it in select, or else you can use it in from or where class. So these are the ways we can use subqueries. So okay. And now we'll get into the types of subqueries. So we have six types of subqueries we'll be using majorly. One is a scalar subquery return single value. Okay, so we'll be writing the inside query with an output of a single value. So we'll be using that in a where condition of outer query. So to get an output. So we'll see with an example here. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So we will use the customers here. So before using this table, first we'll see what is there in the table. So these are the 5 rows in the customer tables. So okay. Now we'll use score here. So we have values. We'll get a single value here. So as a scalar subquery, it returns one single value, right? So okay, greater than select max score. We'll use max here. So that we'll get a single value, or else we can use minimum, average, sum, not sum. Yeah, you can use it sum, but based on that, you have to change the condition here because as a whole, you'll get an amount, total amount. So if you're getting less, if you are mentioning less than, I will get some output here. But if you're getting, if you are mentioning greater than, so you won't get it because it's sum of all scores. Okay. Now we have to mention. Okay. We have to execute from here. Max score. So you won't get max, sorry, we'll get mention less than here. Okay. So max is 900. So it is for the max here. Max is 900. So if it is less than 900, so it has to show remaining. So see, we have 4 entries here. So this is how scalar subquery works. Okay. I hope you are clear with this example. And now we will get into type 2. Type 2 is a row subquery. Returns one row of multiple columns. Okay, so we'll be selecting one a single, sorry, multiple column you can select, but with the one row. I mean, you have to write with the where condition to get an output here. At first, we'll write the inner query so that you will have an understanding. Then, if you're writing outer query, so that you will be able to modify it based on the inner query. Okay, so now we write same max score here. Mm, okay, where country equal to Germany? Because for the row query, we need to select at least two columns here. Because they return one row of multiple columns. It's not just you have to mention only single column here. You have to select multiple columns. Okay, so not with the inner query, but with the outer query you have to mention. Okay, country equal to, we'll mention Germany here. Okay, so this is inner query. So now we have to write outer query. So you can simply write customers. That won't be an issue. Sometimes if the DB is not connected here, my database DB is not connected here, it will throw an error. So to avoid that, I'm using directly drag and drop. Okay. Okay. Select star from customers. Where, so if you're using PostgreSQL or MySQL, so there is another option of using it. So I'll first mention that. Here in SQL server, so we'll be getting error. So we can't just show the output, but I'll show an alternate write-up query so that you'll have an understanding how it works in MS SQL Server and comparing with the other SQL tools. Okay, so I'll write score here. Okay, see, so we're not supposed to use the bracket here. I mean, in MS SQL Server. But if you are writing the same code in PostgreSQL or MySQL, getting output. So how to write that? I mean, this code in to support in MS SQL Server. I'll modify simply here. Country, we need Germany. And score we have to write with and. So these two has to be there, right? So country and score we need an output. So that we are mentioning with and here equal to max. So we have to write with the bracket. Now if you are running this code, we'll get an output. Okay. So to simplify this code, in PostgreSQL or MySQL, they'll be using country comma score. So directly they'll mention inner query. So that it'll take an output. I mean, it will take a condition from where here, and for the score it will take from here. So everything all depends on the condition. So but here in MS SQL Server, it won't work. So this is how row subquery works. Simply we'll be mentioning the more than one column name, and then I will be giving a condition in the inner query. So based on the inner query and the condition, we are in the aggregation function we are mentioning in the select statement. So we will get an output and we will get a row. Entire row will be getting it. There won't be any issue, but for the condition wise, we have to mention it in an inner query. So based on this condition, we will get an output. Okay, this is how row subquery works. So, okay. Now we'll get into type 3. Type 3 is column subquery. So return one column of multiple rows. Okay. Okay. So return one column of multiple rows. So we have to select a column in inner query. Select wait a minute, I'll show the table. Okay. See, we have two tables here. So what we'll be doing here is, so written one column of multiple rows. So we need one column, but with needs to select for multiple rows. So in this case, so we can go for country also. There won't be any issue. But for a slight change, I'll be using both the tables here, so that you have an understanding how to use two tables. Anyway, we're going to use two tables for all the types of subqueries. But I'm starting from here. From the column subquery onwards, I'll be using two tables. Okay, so select I'm using customer ID. So because it is a foreign key, so it is just linked with the primary key of country customers table. So I'll use the customer ID here. Okay, so yeah, so see here I written one column of multiple rows. So we have multiple rows with a single column, right? Now we have to write the outer column. Select star from postings, where for the customers we'll call it as ID, right? So ID in the single column. So this is how column subquery works. Okay, so every time you have to mention this open and close. Only then I'll be writing the subquery. Okay. So fourth one as a table subquery. Table subquery return the full set of full result set. I mean table will be throwing out. So okay. So now I'll show the table here. Okay. So at first I'll be writing the inner query. Sorry. Select I'll be using same customer ID. From orders. Difference of comparing with other subqueries. So in table subquery, what we'll do is we'll be joining the tables. So what we'll usually do when using the two tables normally. So we'll be using left join, right join. So what are join types we have based on the usage we'll be using. So likewise for table subquery, we'll be using join here. Right, okay. So now we'll use the outer query with the join. Select star from. Okay. Join. So I introduced some codes here. What I mentioned here is the join. So sometimes if you're using two tables, you have to mention the alias name, right? So in that case, I'll be using C here. Here I will use D. The condition. So if you're closing the bracket, I have to mention the alias name. Okay. I'll use C here on, not C, not customer. Use yes here. Okay. On C dot ID equal to O dot custom name. See, the multi-part identifier 0 point customer ID, sorry, O point customer ID could not be found. Okay, so Okay, so this is how table subquery works. So we have to mention the table. So here the same thing we have mentioned here, right? For the column subquery, what we do. So we have mentioned the selected column with the multiple rows. Same like so we have used the table subquery here. There's no nothing change here, right? But to show the change, I'll be modifying this code. Okay, so I'll go with the count here. Count of information custom ID will go with star. So that we'll have a that we'll have simply the count of all rows. Okay, so total orders. Okay, now what I do? Okay, sorry, I made a mistake here. So if you're using aggregation function using this with a column name, what we have to do? So we have to use the group by here. For group by we have to mention this column name. Okay, this is how it works. So to modify this, you can go with the first name. This is not mandatory that you have to show entire table. If you want, you can select the column names also. So these are the names with the country. So when joining with the total orders. Okay. So we want we can go with score also to have a better understanding of the table. Okay, this is how the table subquery works. So now go with the. I hope you understand better the table subquery how to use it. So it is not mandatory that you have to mention all those things. They simply like you will be combining two tables using joins here, but with a subquery subquery type. So this is how we'll call it a table subquery. So same like you can use it with a row subquery or whatever it is. But if you are combining with two tables here, if you're using two tables, so we'll call it as table subquery with some joins. Okay. So now we'll go with the next type, correlated subquery. Okay, refers to outer query available per row. So based on row, we'll call it as correlated. Correlated means we have written some condition here, right, outside of the query, outside of the inner query. So this condition we are writing inside the table, inside the subquery itself without using join. We'll call it as a correlated subquery. So I'll show how it works. Select just writing the inner query using the same type so that you will have an understanding how it differentiate using the query changes. So you'll have an idea how to use and when to use. If I'm using different examples, you'll get confused. So that only I'm using two tables here, that too with the same column names. So if you are using this and changing the condition, or else using the joins, so based on that, I can able to figure out like which type of subquery we are currently using. So to have that idea, so I'm using it. I hope I will be understanding better at the end of this video. Okay, so let's start from select customer ID from uh, orders. So when we go, we have to mention alias name. Then we go with the condition where condition the same condition what we mention outside, what I mention inside. C dot ID. So while writing this one, compared to this, so for this we have to write the ID. The ID which is in the outer query, in the ID which is in inner query. But while writing inside, So I have to mention the custom ID, which is inner query is a table and ID which is in outer query. Will show difference. So let's start from where. See, compare with this table subquery. So we have written a customer table here and we have written orders table here. Okay. So orders tables ID is mentioned on the right side and the customer tables ID is mentioned on the left side. Why? Because we are writing this outside the inner query. So this condition is purely depend on customer's table. But here we are writing the table orders inside query. So that it has to be depend on this one. So the condition has to be start with the orders table. So that I'm using customer ID here and the ID which is depending on the outside table. So I'm mentioning the right side. Okay. So I'm using exist here. Exist. Okay. That's it. Okay. See. So this is how the correlated subquery works. Sometimes if you're changing the table name outside, you have to modify that to inside because it really depends on the table, both inner and outer. So if you want to modify the condition, the where condition, so you have to mention, you have to modify both table as well as the condition which is mentioned in the inner table. Then only you can get, then only you won't get an error. So we'll be getting the output. So this is how correlated subquery works. So our last subquery type is non-correlated subquery. Can be run independently evaluated ones. So the same kind of subquery will be using, but it won't depend on the conditions, right? The condition what we mentioned in the inner query, we won't use that. So both inner and outer query will be independent. Okay. Select from sorry, right inner query, right? So select the customer ID from orders. Oh, now for the where we'll be using the same customer ID equal to 1. Okay. Okay, so we are getting customer ID 1. So now we are using, so you can think about it, the same, we have seen already kind of single output, scalar subquery. Same kind of query we are writing here, but we have a difference here. We'll call that too as a non-correlated subquery. Why? Because non-correlated is all about two queries which are not dependent on each other. So that case we'll call it as non-correlated subquery, right? So we're not just using join here or else we're not using the where condition in the inner query to connect both the tables, nothing like that. Both are totally independent. So that we'll call it as a non-correlated subquery. Okay, select star from customers for ID because this is the ID column which is in customers in this inner query. See, getting in output. So look at it. So same like we are getting a single output with the inner query. With that condition, we are calling with an outer condition. Sorry, outer query. So we're getting output. So likewise, we are using an inner query with where condition of single output in scalar value. So with that scalar value, we are combining with we are calling to an outer query. Based on that, we are getting output with multiple columns. So this is how non-correlated subquery works. We'll call this also a non-correlated subquery, nothing like that. But sometimes if you are using with multiple columns, at that time if you are going with a condition, so you can able to modify it. But likewise, if you are doing a condition, we won't call it as a scalar subquery because we won't type conditions here. Well, just like that, we'll be getting with an aggregate function a single value. Based on single value, we'll calling with an outer query. We'll call it as a scalar subquery. But here, based on the condition only, we're getting a single value. With that single value, we are calling with an outer query, and we are getting an output. So then we'll calling this as a non-correlated subquery. So this is how subquery types works. So if you have any doubts, you can mention that and type in the comment section. So based on that, in the next video, I'll be explaining better. Okay, thank you. Thank you for watching this video. Bye.